175 years of Wesleyans in Indiana is a long time. But actually, the message of the Wesleys, forgiveness from the penalty of sin and deliverance from the power of sin, arrived in our state even earlier. In the early 1800s, Methodist circuit riders were already spreading the gospel and planting churches across the state. Several of those early Methodist congregations joined in a movement to abolish slavery from our country. Churches in Fountain City, Back Creek, and Layado became stops on an underground railroad, channeling runaway slaves to freedom in Canada. In 1843, when ministers in Michigan and New York decided to break away from the Methodist Church over the issue of slavery, it was no surprise that congregations in Indiana wanted to join this new denomination. By the Second General Conference of 1848, there were sufficient churches in the new Wesleyan Methodist connection that a separate Indiana conference was created, the event we are celebrating this year. These Wesleyan Methodist congregations were scattered all over the state, organized in circuits of about a dozen congregations served by horseback riders, young men who traveled from church to church over the span of several months to preach, marry, and baptize. Missionaries were sent out to places as near as Tennessee and as far away as Africa to reach those who had not yet heard the gospel. After the Civil War, a great movement swept across the country, challenging believers to experience a deeper, sanctified life. An ideal location for hearing this holiness message was a campground, land set apart for powerful preaching and Christian fellowship. In 1894, the Indiana Wesleyan Methodist purchased land near Fairmount, Indiana, and began holding annual meetings on those grounds. That holiness movement spawned a second denomination. Many Quakers and Methodists left their denominations to form small clusters of churches, promoting this second work of grace. Seth Cook Reese, born in Westfield, Indiana, and raised in the Quaker tradition, was one of the best holiness preachers in Indiana. The Earthquaker, they called him. In 1897, Reese joined with the former Methodist, Martin Wells Knapp, to form a denomination that soon became known as the Pilgrim Holiness Church. The Pilgrims of Indiana had their campground too. Located in Frankfort, it was also the site of a small Bible college that prepared men and women for ministry for almost 40 years. A similar Bible college was established on the Wesleyan Methodist campground. In 1917, that Fairmount Bible College was merged into yet another college opened by the Wesleyan Methodist after they raised $100,000 to purchase an abandoned campus in Marion, later to become Indiana Wesleyan University and Wesley Seminary at IWU. Eventually, all roads led to Indianapolis. In 1940, the Pilgrim Holiness Church chose our capital city as the location for their headquarters. A stately building on Ohio Street still stands where the denomination functioned for decades. After a disastrous January fire destroyed their buildings in Syracuse, New York, the Wesleyan Methodists moved their headquarters to Marion in 1960. They thought Indiana would be a better location, but perhaps they had never heard of Midwest tornadoes. 5 years later, a mighty rushing wind descended upon their new structure, but this time it was not the Holy Spirit. Conversations about combining our two similar denominations had begun in the 1940s. Finally, in 1968, at a location just a few miles from where we are gathered today, the Wesleyan Methodist and the Pilgrim Holiness Churches merged to form the Wesleyan Church. 4 districts were realigned to form 3, and in 2015, 2 of those districts merged to form our present Crossroads District. From circuit riders, earthquaking preachers, impactful camp meetings, Christ-centered schools, to an international headquarters, Wesleyans in Indiana have fulfilled the challenge of the Wesley brothers to serve this present age and fulfill our calling to spread holiness throughout the land.